Hi, today I'll be refuting the claim that competitive dance is better categorized as a sport than an art. My opponent's three secondary claims were that dance is just as physically demanding as any other sport, there is competition among other dancers, and that dance is art because of its capability to connect to its audience on a personal level. My immediate response to this proposition is that the arguer fails to put the argument into context and explain why we are having this argument. Although there may be controversy around the categorization of competitive dance, there is a lack of relevance and urgency in the argument. The audience does not know who categorizes competitive dance as an art, nor why competitive dance needs to be categorized as a sport. So my response to the first claim that dance is just as physically demanding as any other sport. The arguer's first subpoint is that dance falls under the definition of a sport. However, in this sentence, the arguer uses the broad term of dance rather than the topic of competitive dance that their proposition suggests. So already there is confusion and an ambiguity of terms. So in this case, I will have an evidence challenge for this because the arguer used the Oxford definition of a sport. However, the definition they provided does not apply to the general term of dance because there is a lack of the competitive feature. So when you look up dance in Oxford Dictionary, it says move rhythmically to music, perform, or lead in a particular direction. So none of these definitions of dance fall into the definition of a sport because there is no competitive feature. So due to the ambiguity of terms, the arguer fallaciously reasoned that according to Oxford Dictionary, dance falls under the definition of a sport. Their second subpoint on this is that dancers need the same skills and have the same responsibilities as other athletes. And again, I'd like to point out that they use the ambiguous term of dance instead of competitive dance. So although they can provide a good definition of an athlete, it is too broad. And another evidence challenge for this is that they provided a definition of an athlete using a source from a professional classical ballet. And ballet is not considered a competitive dance. It is actually one of the original classical dances from France in the 15th century and stuff. So that wouldn't be relevant here as a source qualification. And the qualification weakens the ethos in the context of this argument. But I have a reasoning challenge here as well because I think that this is a separate argument that the arguer is having. So here, the arguer attempts to prove her case by using an implied categorical syllogism. So she attempts to say that all athletes play a sport, dancers are athletic, and therefore they play a sport. However, this reasoning is incorrect because there are people who play a sport but are not considered athletic. People like golfers, people who play poker or billiards. And then there's the other side where you can be someone who's athletic like me, but I don't play any sports. So the two characteristics are not mutually exclusive, unlike the arguer implies. And again, going back to the Oxford Dictionary of a sport, Oxford Dictionary actually classifies hunting and fishing as sports. And I'm pretty sure a lot of us would generally think that hunters and fishers are not athletic people. So my response to the secondary claim that there is competition among other dancers. Their first subpoint is that regional and national competitions are very important and serious. I think that this subclaim, the arguer fails to explain why it's relevant to her proposition. And again, I also think there's an implied categorical syllogism here that all competitions are a sport and dances are competitive regionally and nationally. Therefore, a competitive dance is a sport. But I'd also like to point out that the arguer didn't use the terms competitive dancers in their speech. She simply just kept saying dancers, so it makes a lot of confusion and not very specific argument. And another counterclaim here would be that beauty pageants are competitive, but they are not considered a sport. So this just goes to further the point that clarity of terms is needed in this argument. For a minor evidence challenge for this, she uses a quote to talk about why competitions are important and serious. However, in the quote it says fun-filled and exciting. So I think, in my opinion, there could be better adjectives than important and serious used as objective standards to better prove her argument in this case. And to go on to that, the objective standards of importance and seriousness, as dance, there's dance in art and museums, and so using the objective standards of importance and seriousness for the competitions it completely ignores the other important and serious aspects of dance as an art form. And again, during the speech, the arguer just says dance instead of competitive dance. And so for the third claim that dance is art because of its capability to connect to its audience on a personal level, I'd like to say that first, this completely contradicts her proposition that competitive dance is supposed to be a sport. So the arguer is contradicting herself in the third point. And then on top of that, she uses a piece of evidence from an article titled "Dance is not a sport." So right away, the evidence being used is advocating for the opposite side of the arguer's main claim. So in conclusion, this argument did not provide context or purpose for the speech. And on top of that, the arguer misused terms which caused confusion to the audience. And there are also several pieces of evidence that contradict the arguer's proposition. The argument lacks relevance, clarity, and cohesiveness.
Thank
I poked myself with this tape.
Ouch. Oh, you bled a little bit on it. Okay. Sorry about that. You know, everything's labeled clearly at the beginning. Thank you. There's a lot of argument about the definitions of dance and competitive dance, which I thought you did a pretty good job explaining, and why it was important to get those ideas clear. That especially is true given that third point where dance is described as an art as opposed to a competition. And then you did some other comparisons along the way to competitions that are not athletic, so they wouldn't necessarily fit in the same category. And you kind of criticized the implied syllogisms that the advocates are presenting, and I thought that you did a pretty good job on that. Obviously, people are in a rush to get out of here, so we'll just cut it short there. Thank you.